Welcome! In this video we will look at adding menus to a form with the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today we're beginning work on a new application which is based heavily on the work we did in part 10 of this tutorial. So what we have here is the embedded web application that will display an embedded HTML file within a form. We've made some changes to this and we're going to name our application SVG Charting. Now if we run this application as it stands, we will see we've moved things around a bit since the tutorial part 10. What we have in the vast majority of the screen here is an HTML control, and we have two buttons. An exit button which exits the application and a build a chart button. The build a chart button does as it did in part 10, will display an embedded HTML file using a cascading style sheet. Now we're not going to do that part today. What we're going to do today is to add a menu to this application. So to do that we need to go into the PowerBasic forms, and it loads our form up quite happily. Now previously we've used the toolkit to actually drop controls on the screen, but this time what we have to do is nip up to the toolbar itself and pick Menu Editor. The Menu Editor gives you a dialog on which we can actually set up a menu structure. Now what we're going to do in here is we're going to put in a standard File and Edit menu. The first one defaults to a pop-up, and if we click on Next, it's the entry after the file. And what we're going to do in here is a load template. It will create the ID name for your menu option automatically. You can of course override this. You can also put a prompt in. And we move on to our next one, which will be Save a Template. And after this, we want a nice separator line and an exit option. As you'll see, the file menu has appeared on screen. If we click the test switch on the toolbar, it allows us to see we have our menu, a load template, a save template and an exit menu. And it will put test dialogues just to test that it's actually functioning correctly. However, what we're going to do now is we're going to set some accelerator shortcuts in. So when we go to the load template, we can put in the accelerator keys, the letter L, and for save a template we'll put the letter S. If you wish to put different accelerator keys, for example, hold down the shift button and press the letter S and it will put it in automatically for you. If we just want the S, just press S. And if we close on that, save that to disk, and then go back to our application and attempt to run it now, we will see that our file menu has appeared on the screen. Now it has actually moved everything on the screen down slightly, so we'll need to move these buttons down to the bottom of the form, but we'll do that in a moment. Look at the file menu, we have the load, save and exit. Now they don't do any at the moment because we haven't put any events in for them. Once we put the events in, we can actually test out these work properly. But what we'll do first of all is we'll move these buttons slightly further down on the dialog. We go to our dialog. Here are our buttons here. So what we're going to do is we'll just tidy these up slightly and perhaps move these down . 15 dialog units should do the trick. Let's make them 400 then. just about there. 405. Right, that's close enough. Okay, now let's have a look to see what that's actually done to our application. Now, as you'll see underneath the specification of the dialog, there are two function calls that have magically appeared. One to attach a menu to the dialog handle, and one to attach the accelerator to the dialog handle. If we have a look at these two functions, if we do an F2 to look at the attached menu, there's our attached menu with the structure we put in. Now, it's quite happily created a pop-up for the file and two strings for the load template, save template, and an additional pop-up for the exit. And if we have a look, there are two other functions. If we look at the attach accelerator function, this is where the shortcut keys have actually been added. And it has an additional subfunction which sets the values. These you don't have to worry about. The forms designer will handle these for you. So having created those, what we want to do next is we want to put in event handlers for these three new objects we've added on screen. So we have a look at the attached menu. We'll see that there's been a constant created for each of them: file load template, file save template, and file exit. So we take the file load template first, go to our event handler of our form, and we can quite happily slot in these as new case statements. And just like the other buttons on the screen, they are handled exactly the same way. And our save template will be another case statement. And the final one will be our exit. Now, the one thing we can do with the exit one is, since we already have a routine to handle exits, the ID abort, we should just be able to add on the constant for the file exit to this case statement. So if we have a look to see what that is, and go back to our event handler, and simply add on that to there. So what should happen now, if we run our application, in our exit, click on exit, and it exits the application, because we now have a event handler quite happily to handle that. Now, one thing we might want to do is, most applications prompt you to be sure that you wish to exit the application rather than just clicking on the button by mistake. So what we'll put in here is we'll put a test to make sure that the user is absolutely sure that they wish to exit the application. So using the message box function, we can ask the user, "Are you sure you wish to exit?" We can give them a yes/no option on screen, two buttons. If they click the yes option, then we can end the dialog. So if we test that now, and we click the exit, we get the yes/no. We can select no, then nothing happens. If we select yes, then we exit the application. However, there is one other thing that this won't actually handle. If the user clicks on the X at the top right hand corner of the form this particular event will not pick that up. We have to put something special in place to handle that kind of logic. And this is a quite separate area of the event handling. Now, the sys command one will actually pick up the fact that we're actually attempting to close the dialog down, and we can then basically put in the same question we asked before. However, we're going to handle this one slightly differently. If they say yes, they wish to exit, then we'll mark the function equal to 0, and we're going to use a post quit message API function call. The reason for this, I found in early versions of Windows 10, although you did actually appear to exit the application, it was still sitting in memory, which is not something you want to have. A small Windows 10 feature. However, using the post quit message in here does actually force the application to exit memory as well as stop on screen. So with this in place, we should successfully be able to click on the X at the top right hand corner of the screen and get the same option. So this way the user has no way of exiting the application without being asked the question. So back to our menus. If we look at where we've created the event handler, we can put a message box in to confirm we're actually in the right place. And if we ever run the application now, we get the event handler kicking in for each of these. And also if we use the shortcut on the keyboard, pressing the L key, it triggers just the same, or the S key for saving. So now we have a menu on the screen. However, one thing we want to do, we want to go a bit further. Many menus you actually see on screen have down the left hand side a space for an icon. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add an icon to our menus to give it a little more visual appeal. Now, in order to have icons, we'll need to increase the number of icons declared at the beginning of our application. So what we're going to do here, we will set up 3 icons, one for load, one for save, and one for exit. And we will add them as resources. So, having added these 3 icons, how do we actually amend the menu to add the icons into it? Well, this could be something fairly tricky normally to do, but I prepared earlier a library which we're going to be using called menu. Now, we're going to reference this at the beginning of our code. So we go to where the form is actually prepared. This is our form reference information at the top, adding all the controls. We have the attached menus, and at this point PB Forms finishes. What we want to do is put an extra piece of code after the end of the PB Form section. Now we're going to add on 3 variables to keep track of what we're doing with our bitmaps. Now I'm going to use the bitmap size to define the size of basically the icon. Now I'm going to default to 32 bits in this case. You can make it 16 if you want the menu item smaller, but let's go for 32 for the moment. Now, the way the system actually works, it counts all icons from 0. So we're going to set our icon number, in this case, to be 1. Now the first icon we added to the system, as you remember from the beginning of the code, if I can find it, was we added the pie chart icon. So it's icon 0. So the load icon will be icon 1, the save icon 2, and the cancel 1 icon 3. So if we nip back to our code, so the first thing we want to do is set the icon number. Then we want to set the menu item that we're actually going to be updating. And again, these also start at 0. So this will be the load one we're actually changing. And after this, we're going to be calling the routine which will set the icon to that menu item. There's a couple of things we'll want to do when the attach menu is actually run. Now in here, where the pop-up and menu variables are actually used, these are local to the function. We want to store them in globals so we can actually access them outside this function. So we're going to set a couple of globals up. One for holding the menu itself, and one for holding the pop-up. Pop-up 1. So we're going to set these two variables, these two global variables, up at the beginning of our code. And these will be referenced when we actually call the routine to set the icon on the menu. So if we go back to here, now the routine I've set up to use this is one called set menu icon. And we need to pass it the handle to the dialog we're actually in. So with these parameters in mind, if we have a look at the set menu icon, it's taking in the dialog, the menu pointer, the menu item, and the icon number. Now I'll come back in detail to see what these actually do, but what we'll try is we'll try running this just to make sure we haven't made any syntactical errors so far. Right, there we go, and the first icon has magically appeared on the screen. So having got the first one in place, we just have to slot the next two in. So we go back to our form designation, and what we want to do is basically copy these for the next two icons. Now the icon number we're talking about is number 2, and the menu item in this case is number 1, and the final icon is icon 3. The menu item in this case is not 2 because 2 is the horizontal separator. What we want is number 3, which is the exit one. So if we've got that correct, we should see all 3 icons quite happily appearing on our application. And there we have it. We have a load icon, a save icon, and an exit icon, quite happily added to our menu. The routine itself is going to be using a number of Windows API calls to perform the task of actually finding the icon. So what it's doing is it's picking up a handle to the icon by extracting the icon from our executable. Since the icon file is hidden within the executable, this is one method for pulling it out. There are other methods, but this one works quite well. We then convert the icon effectively to a bitmap, and then we call the API call to set that bitmap into that position on the menu item. And the second function is the one basically that calls a whole pile of Windows API calls to convert the icon to a bitmap. I have passed in the size of the bitmap to allow you to change it to 16. So if you desire to have a 16-bit icon on your menu options, this is what you would see. Personally, I prefer the larger icon, but I'll leave it to you to decide what you want in your own applications. Now, the other thing we might want to do is to add on an additional menu item. So if we go back to our forms and have a look at our menu designer. Now, we've quite happily got a load, a save, a separator and an exit on it. If we wanted to add on something additional, for example, an additional pop-up. So let's put in one called edit, and we'll make this one a pop-up. And we'll go into next. In fact, if you move that one to the left so it appears at the same level as file. And on our next one, we're going to, let's just call it test. Let's call it test menu. And what we're going to do in this one, we're going to actually set that one as a checked menu item. So if we save that and run our application now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to change this to pop-up 2 so it doesn't collide with the other pop-up. Otherwise it would confuse the system. And we may have the icons appearing in the wrong menu options. So let's try that. Right, our icons have disappeared, okay. And yes, we've managed to fluff it. What have we done? Right, okay. That, I think, is what we've done wrong. We created a new pop-up, but I forgot to change the variable to pop-up 2 from pop-up 1. So if we run that now, our icons are there, and we have a test menu, which is ticked. Where the icon would normally be, it's got the tick mark in. So what we'll do in this one is we will put some handling in for this particular one in our event handler to let you see what else we can actually do with menus. Again, like all the other ones, we'll put our event handling code in. But rather than display a message box, what we want to do next is we want to handle something a little different for this one. So when the user actually clicks on that, the first thing we want to do is we want to pull back the state of the menu, i.e. is it ticked or not ticked. So we'll create a little local variable which is going to be used for that function. So how do we do that? Well, we have a look at the menu get state command. Now we've already stored the menu handle in a global, and we're going to use the by command option, which allows us to explicitly use the name of the menu option as opposed to its ordinal position. And we want to save that to our new variable. So using that command, it will then determine the state that that menu's in, and it'll put the value into long menu state. Then all we have to do is to test that value. So if it's checked, we can do one thing, and if it's not checked, we can do another. So if it is actually checked, what we're going to do, we're going to do a toggle in this one to set the state of the menu. And this is the menu we're talking about. And we want to send its value to unchecked. So we test the state of the menu now, store that in this variable. If it's checked, then we mark it as unchecked, and if it's unchecked, we mark it as checked. So what this should do, this should give us a toggle on that menu option. Yes. Helps when you check it right. So if it's checked, we uncheck it. If it's unchecked, we check it. So we run that now, that we're set them the right way round. What we're doing is, when the user clicks on the test menu option, we are determining the state of that. Is it ticked or not ticked? We're storing that in the long menu state. If the menu state equals checked, then we're marking it as unchecked. If otherwise, we're marking it as checked. So if we run that code now and have a look at our application, it's initially ticked. If we click the menu option, it now appears unticked. So this gives you a way of dynamically setting menu options. There are other options you can do as well. You can actually grey out or deactivate menu options. If we look in here, you'll find in the help file there was a whole series of options to allow you to check it, to mark it as default, to disable it, to enable it, grey it out, highlight it, uncheck it, or unhighlight it. So this application we've created today is going to be used as the basis for the next few videos. But that completes today's video, looking at menus on forms. Thank you for watching.